hypothesis for your research project because of following reasons. Provides the investigator with relational statement that is directly testable in a research study, whether it can be testable or not. Sometimes it cannot be testable for some physical problems. You should keep in mind that also. Provides the direction of the research, I have already told you. Provides a framework for reporting conclusions of your study, and it could be tested and shown to be probably supported or not supported apart from our own values and opinions. I want to give one example that in experimental research, the researcher is interested in making predictions about the outcome of the experiment. In the problem which we stated earlier, our interest is to study the effect of remedial instructional material on the achievement of slow learners in mathematics. Here, the expected outcome may be in terms of measured as the gain in the achievement in the mathematics by the group of slow learners. On the other hand, in the historical or some descriptive research, you may be interested in investigating the history of an educational institution, the life of a man, or happening of any event, and thus may not have the basis for making predictions of results. In such cases, no hypothesis needed. A hypothesis therefore may not be required in such fact-finding studies. It may be noted that when fact-finding alone is the aim of a research project, hypothesis is not at all required. Hypothesis can be stated as directional or non-directional type. The hypothesis which stipulates the direction of the expected differences or relationships in terms as directional hypothesis. For example, in the problem stated earlier, you may frame the directional hypothesis like there will be significant positive gain in the achievement of mathematics of slow learner at the primary level after studying the remedial instructional materials. This statement of hypothesis stipulates the direction in terms of significant positive gain in the achievement of maths of slow learners at the primary level as the result of studying the remedial instructional program. A research hypothesis which does not specify the direction of expected difference or relationship is a non-directional hypothesis. And example is there will be a change in the achievement of mathematics of slow learners at the primary level after studying the remedial instructions materials. In this above statement, the direction of change in achievement of maths of slow learners at primary level has not specified, and hence the hypothesis is in the non-directional form. Now, the operational definition of the terms, which I am now discussing. Every details you have to show in your research proposal, because while facing your viva voce, you have to keep the research proposal in your hand containing all this point now I am discussing. In the behavioral research, many variables of the interest of are abstraction and cannot be observed directly therefore. So, it's necessary to define all the terms observable acts. Thus, an operational definition ascribes meaning to a concept by specifying the operations that must be performed in order to measure the concept. That means the word you are using in the title, you have to explain every word, the history of the word and the explanation of the word. If there is any brief note from which this word is first referred, you have to mention that also with date and with the name of the researcher who has used that word. So, that is the definition of the operational term. Now, we are coming into a very important part, that is research design. A research design is not just a work plan. I have already told that research design is the blueprint of the research. You can say it deals with a logical problems and not a logistical problem. And in this section, a brief description of the following will be mentioned. That is type of study, which type of study is the research is. That is whether explanatory or descriptive or historical or case study or survey type or qualitative, quantitative, which type of study you have selected, that will be explained. Then population on the sample of the for the study, you have to explain that also. Tools to be used, whether you are using the tool from a standardized tool from market, you have bought it, or you have developed it by you, by you or by someone, and it must be standardized form. Then analysis plan and delimitation of the study. The types of research, I am not going to details because there is, if I go to types of research in very explanatory way, I cannot complete this. So only one or two words I will say about the types of research. In the historical study, it aims to discover, describe and interpret what has existed in the past. In this type of study, your focus will be on the time frame from in which you are selecting the study. Here one example is given. Student study enrollment trends among various categories of students in a particular program offered by IGNOU 1995 to 2000. In this, here focus will be on the enrollment of various categories of students during past years, for which you would identify the documents and records and scrutiny and analysis. That means from 95 to 2000, you have to analyze every year students and enrollment in that particular course or particular program. And after data have been identified, the data pertaining to past goes to the rigorous evaluation. Is known as criticism of data, and it involves dual process of establishing authenticity of the source, that is external criticism, and also establishing the validity of its content, internal criticism. That means whether the data you have collected, if they are authentic, that is external criticism, and how you are evaluating it, and you are determining the reliability and the validity of your content, that is the internal criticism. The descriptive study. Descriptive study aims to obtain pertinent and precise information concerning the current status of phenomena, whether possible to draw general conclusions from the facts discovered. It is restricted not only fact-finding but may often result in formulation of important principles of knowledge and solution of significant problems concerning local, state, national, international issues. These studies collect and provide three types of information. What are these three types of information? Of what exists with respect to variables or conditions in a situation. Your interviewer may ask, if they listen that you are doing descriptive study, they may ask this question: of what we want by identifying standards or norms with which to compare the present condition, or what experts consider to be desirable, and of how to achieve goals by exploring possible ways and means on the basis of the experience of others, opinion of the experts. Descriptive study can be classified in various forms. They are classified on the purposes they achieve, some on the basis of geographical area, or some on the basis of techniques they employ. There are The various types of descriptive research are comparative, that aims to measure the behavior of a criterion variable at a single point of time in order to draw conclusions about similarities or differences between classification of the variables, that is between the populations. Correlational, that aims to measure the degree to which a predictor and predicted variables associated or related, that is degree to which changes in the predictor correspondence to change the prediction. And developmental, that is aims to measure the changes over time or trends in a criterion variable due to aging, maturation, recovery, learning, etc. It's of two-way types, that is longitudinal, that studies one group of subjects over a prolonged period of time, that is you want to measure how the behavioral changes occurs of a group of students. So if your research framework for 5 years, you can select a school and you can select the class 5 students, and each year as they are promoting into the next year, that is class 6, class 7, class 8, 9, 10, you are observing the same students how their behavioral changes is occurring. So it will be a longitudinal study. And what is the cross-sectional study? That studies two or more groups of subjects, each of which is at different progressive level. That means the same research can be done in a cross-sectional way, that you are observing the behavioral changes in class 5 students in the same year, then class 6 student, class 7 students, class 8 students. You are comparing their behavioral changes, but the samples are different students, not the same students like longitudinal study. Understood? Next, survey types research. This type of study is intended to find out the present status. It can be further divided into descriptive, normative, evaluative, and comparative study. And qualitative study includes case study and ethnography. As I have already mentioned, if you want to describe or finding facts about one person only, let's think you want to make a study on Saurav Ganguly, the great cricketer. You have to ask him questions, and you have to find out the facts of his records. That is your qualitative study, and it is based on a single person, so it will be a case study. I hope you can understand. Surveys are studies of a generalized statistical nature rather than in-depth studies or individuals on their characteristics about their present status. It involves the clear definition of the problem, systematic collection of data, careful analysis and interpretation and reporting of the findings. Surveys include topics such as teachers' opinion, attitudes on various educational matters, pupil dropout rates, etc. Data is collected through the use of questionnaires, interviews, standardized tests, and other techniques, and this method has been widely used in educational research for many years. Mainly nowadays, the researchers love to go researches on survey methods only. So you are planning to go for survey study, you have to make in-depth knowledge about the survey study. It may be noted that case study method of research also falls in this category of descriptive research type, and typical case study is an intensive investigation of a social unit. Case study is essentially research in depth rather than breadth. So it is applicable to a very large sample However, it can be employed in a studying small group of individual or a unit. The social unit may be individual, a family, educational institutions, group of delinquent slow learners, gifted students, or any teenage groups. Developmental studies are not only concerned with the description of the current state of affairs and the phenomena situation in a given point in the study. Recorded data are utilized with a view determining what has happening in the past. Ethnography studies have defined an in-depth analytical description of an intact cultural scene. In case you are interested in the topic related to curriculum evaluation, you could problematize it. Thus, the effectiveness of teaching materials in achieving the desired outcomes, the two types of evaluation studies, formative and summative. Formative studies, you already know that to gather information about the program while they are in progress, and summative evaluation is designed to measure the effectiveness of the program on its completion by analyzing the data collecting using a variety of instruments including standardized tests. Action research is also done. It aims to help teachers, learners, and others to provide a way of working which takes a theory and practices into one whole. Ideas in action. In its approach, action research shares with other approaches the need for careful systematic planning and selection of methods appropriate to nature of the information required. In this field of education, action research has been employed in curriculum, professional and policy development as well as institutional improvement. Now you can see the action research cycle, that is identification of the problem, then collection and organization of data, interpretation of data, action based data, then reflection on the action taken and identification of the problem. Experimental studies. The aim of experimental research is to investigate the possible cause and effect relationship by manipulating one dependent variable to influence the other variable in the experimental group, and by controlling the other relevant variable and measuring the effect of the manipulation by some statistical means. By manipulating the independent variable, the researcher can see if the treatment makes a difference on the subjects. In the educational research, the most frequently studied dependent variables are achievement, motivation, attention, interest in learning, participation, and attitudes. The common independent variables that are manipulated, these are teaching methods, types of assignment, types of teaching materials such as textbook, visual aids, types of reward, types of questions used by the teacher, evaluation techniques. And there are four essential parts of experimental research. That is, one, control group. No treatment is given in this group. Experimental group, treatment is given in this group. Randomization, the subject is allotted to the control and experimental randomly. Manipulation, it involves deliberate operation of the condition by the researcher. In the process of manipulation, predetermined set of varied conditions are posed on the independent variable, experimental variable, and treatment variable. You have to study all these variables while doing experimental research. And there are also, if random assignment is used, we call the design randomized experimentation or true experimentation, and there is also quasi-experimental design. Pre-test and post-test non-equivalent group. With this design, with both control and experimental group are compared. However, the groups are chosen and assigned out of convenience rather through randomization. I am not going to details. If you take experimental study, you will study a lot about pre-test, post-test, the equivalent group. Time series design, non-equivalent before after design, these all falls under experimental study. You have to study a lot. And this is the post-test, pre-test, post-test, non-equivalent group design. You can see time series design, non-equivalent before and after design. I am not explaining this because if I go to explain this quasi-experimental study, it will take a long time. So I am skipping this. Population of the study ensemble. From the statistical point of view, universe refers to the total number of items or units in the field of inquiry, whether population means the total number of items from where the information needed, that the information needed for carrying out the research by me, that is the population. And for but the carrying out the research, you have to select a sample because you cannot go through a total population, okay, because it is not feasible for you to go to the total population, which is representative of the population by using the sampling techniques. There are two major sampling techniques, probability and non-probability. If you go to how to sampling techniques, you have to study. I cannot explain here because it will take a long time if I go through every explanation of study. Tools and techniques of data collection. I have already mentioned about the tools. The standardized tools you have to make, and you have to select first whether you will use an achievement test, or you will use the questionnaire or interview or observation. Whatever you will use, you have to make it standardized. And standardization making is not very easy. It has some formula. You have to learn those formula and apply it to make it standardized. Or to avoid this standardization, you can buy standardized tool from market which is already in use. And if you make standardization by your own, then validity, reliability and norms you have to test, and after applying it to as a pilot study, then you can apply it to your target sample. Method of data analysis. The researcher should indicate the brief of the procedure to be followed in analysis of the data. You can adopt any kind of analysis that is depending upon the nature of the data in your research proposal. The research proposal, you must describe the techniques you will use. That means in your proposal which you are taking into the interview board, it should clearly mention how you will analyze your data. Also must clarify the purpose, a particular technique to be used. The selection of technique and its use should be justified in terms of objectives of the study. In case of historical research, it's necessary to throw light on the methods of internal and external criticism that has to be addressed in the analysis of historical data. I have already explained it. Now the delimitations. Due to the constraint of time, resource and etc., you have to put the boundaries to your research in respect of the scope of study by specifying the areas to which the conclusions will be confined, because you cannot reach to the every area in your short time span. Some area must be left out. You have to mention which are the delimitations of the study and the procedure treatment, including the sampling procedure, why you have selected these samples, the sampling techniques you have used, the sampling procedure, and data collection and analysis, and the development of measuring tools and their use in the study you have to measure in the delimitation part. and the bibliography. The research proposal should include the number of books, journals, and other documents that you have studied while in identifying and selecting the research problem which may be used during the tenure of project work. And you may use APA style of referencing while preparing the bibliography. Again, I am telling, I am focusing on social science only. So, APA style, we use APA style. And in literature, we may use MLA style. The time schedule. For completing the project work, you should also prepare a realistic time schedule, keeping in view the other requirement of your thesis and your personal commitments. Dividing your project work into phases and assign dates for completing each phases will help you to use your time systematically. And in these times, every university will provide you a time framework. You have to fill up and you have to submit this time frame, and you have to carry your research project within this time frame. If you fail to carry your research in any phase, you have to explain the authority why you could not complete your research objectives within that time frame. Then you will be given chance to pursue your study further, your research further. So time frame is very, very important now in these days. Now I like to ask Brintika if is there any time or I should complete here, because I have completed the total parts of research proposal which is needed for qualifying viva voce, for interviewing, for facing viva voce. But if I go through discuss carrying out the dissertation work, that means you have already enrolled in PhD, and how you will go through carry out your dissertation work. I think this is not necessary right now. Brintika, over to you.
Yes, Dr. Shyamasree, you have said absolutely right that we have organized this webinar for the PhD aspirants who are going to appear for the PhD Viva Voce to take admissions. So I think you have already comprehended the whole idea, the whole concept, and it has really